If you enjoy real-life scary story, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, then subscribe the channel so you never miss notification of new video. Now, let's get into tonight's story. There's something eerie about working the night shift alone. You think you're by yourselves, but sometimes you aren't. This is a true horror story from my time as a night security guard, one I still can't explain. A few years ago, I worked as an overnight security guard at a warehouse just outside Chicago. The job was easy: monitor the cameras, do occasional patrols, and make sure no one broke in. Most nights were uneventful, but one night changed everything. It was around 2:30 a.m. when I first noticed something strange on the monitors. One of the cameras, positioned near the back loading dock, picked up movement. At first, I thought it was an animal, a raccoon or a stray dog. But as I zoomed in, I saw a man standing just outside the fence. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, and completely still. His face was turned away from the camera, and I assumed he was just some drifter passing through. But then he moved, not like a normal person. He didn't walk, he glided. One moment he was near the fence, the next he was closer to the building, as if the footage had skipped ahead. I switched to the next camera, the one near the employee entrance. My heart nearly stopped. He was standing right outside the door. I hadn't looked away for more than a second. There was no way he could have moved that fast. My hands were shaking as I reached for my radio to call the other guard on duty. But then I remembered, tonight, I was alone. Swallowing my fear, I decided to check the door myself. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The sound of my own footsteps echoed through the empty building. When I reached the entrance, I took a deep breath and peered through the glass. Nothing. The man was gone. I sighed in relief, convincing myself it was just a glitch in the camera feed. Maybe some static interference had caused the image to jump. I turned back toward the security office, and then I heard it. A soft tapping. Not on the entrance door, but on the security window right behind me. Slowly, I turned my head. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale face with hollow eyes, staring directly at me. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. But when I blinked, he was gone. No movement, no sound, just empty hallway and my own ragged breathing. I checked the cameras again. Every feed was normal. No sign of the man anywhere on the property. But when I replayed the footage from earlier, there was nothing. The recording showed an empty parking lot. No man, no movement. Just me, reacting to something that, according to the cameras, had never been there. I quit that job a few weeks later. I never saw the man again. But every so often, I think about that night, about how he moved, about how he disappeared, about how, if the footage was right, he was never really there at all. What do you think? Was it a glitch, or did something else find its way into the warehouse that night? Let me know in the comments. If you've ever worked a night shift, you know how eerie the quiet can be. But sometimes, it's not just your imagination playing tricks on you. This is a true horror story from my time working the night shift at a hospital, one that still keeps me up at night. A few years ago, I worked as a nurse at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. I was on the overnight shift in one of the older wings, mostly handling post-op patients and the occasional emergency intake. The nights were long, but I'd gotten used to the quiet halls and dim lighting. One night, around 3 a.m., I was checking patient charts at the nurse's station when I noticed something odd. A room at the end of the hallway, room 733, had its door slightly open. The problem? That room had been empty for weeks. At first, I figured someone had just forgotten to close it. But as I got closer, I noticed something chilling. There was someone sitting on the bed, a woman wearing a hospital gown, staring at the wall. Her hair was long, black, and tangled, and her posture was unnaturally rigid. "Ma'am?" I called out hesitantly, stepping inside. She didn't move. I checked the patient list. Room 733 was unassigned. No one was supposed to be here. As I reached for my radio to call security, she slowly turned her head toward me. What I saw made my blood run cold. Her face was impossibly pale, her eyes wide, but there was something off, like she wasn't really seeing me, like she was looking through me. Then she smiled. A slow, unnatural grin that stretched too far across her face. The radio in my hand crackled, and in that split second, the lights flickered. When they came back on, she was gone. The bed was empty, the sheets perfectly smooth, like no one had ever been there. But the air in the room was freezing, and I swear I could still hear the faintest sound of laughter. I backed out of the room, heart pounding, and slammed the door shut. I tried convincing myself I had imagined it, that maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But when I checked the security cameras later, room 733's door had never opened. There was never anyone inside. After that night, I refused to go near room 733 again. Some of the older nurses told me stories about a patient who had died there years ago, one who was known for her unsettling smile. But I don't know what I saw that night, and honestly, I don't want to know. Have you ever encountered something strange while working late? Let me know in the comments. If you've ever driven alone at night, you know how unsettling the empty roads can feel. But sometimes, the scariest things aren't what's ahead of you, but what's watching you from the darkness. This is a true horror story of a late-night drive I'll never forget. I was driving back home from a weekend trip to the Poconos, cutting through a long stretch of Route 209. It was nearly 2 a.m., and there wasn't another car in sight. The road was surrounded by dense trees, and every so often, my headlights would catch glimpses of old, abandoned structures tucked between them, forgotten motels, boarded-up gas stations, remnants of another time. The first time I saw him, I barely registered it. A man standing on the shoulder of the road, just past a rusted-out road sign. He wasn't hitchhiking. He wasn't walking, just standing. I only caught a glimpse before my car sped past, and in my exhaustion, I chalked it up to my eyes playing tricks on me. Maybe it was just a shadow, a tree stump that looked vaguely human in the dim glow of my headlights. But then, a few miles later, I saw him again. Same posture, same unsettling stillness, only this time, he was closer to the road, as if he had taken a step forward. A cold chill ran down my spine. I pressed down on the gas a little harder, trying to reason with myself. Maybe it was a trick of the fog, maybe I was just tired. But something about him felt wrong. His face had been turned just enough toward the road that I could see the outline of his features. There was something unnatural about them, but I couldn't put my finger on what. I didn't look back, I just drove faster. For a while, I thought I'd left him behind. The trees thinned out, and I saw the welcoming sight of a Wawa gas station up ahead in the distance. I decided to pull in, get some coffee, and shake off whatever weird paranoia had settled over me. The gas station was nearly empty, except for a tired-looking cashier and a single car parked by the pumps. I grabbed a coffee and lingered near the window, staring out into the night. The feeling of being watched still lingered, crawling under my skin like an itch I couldn't scratch. Then, I saw movement. Across the street, just barely visible under the flickering streetlight, was him, the same figure, only now, he was facing me directly. I felt frozen. He hadn't moved while I was watching, but somehow, he was closer than before. His face was clearer now. His features were oddly stretched, too symmetrical, like someone had drawn a person, but got the proportions slightly wrong. And then, he tilted his head, just slightly, as if acknowledging that I'd finally truly seen him. I didn't finish my coffee. I left it on the counter, practically threw some cash at the register, and rushed out. The moment I was back in my car, I locked the doors, hands shaking as I started the engine. I didn't look at him again. I just sped off, my pulse pounding in my ears. I thought I was finally rid of him, but as I pulled into my driveway, exhausted but relieved to be home, my headlights swept across my front yard. And there he was, standing at the edge of my property, waiting. I didn't stay to find out what he wanted. I don't even remember unlocking my front door, just slamming it shut and barricading myself inside. But that night, I swore I heard footsteps outside my window. Slow, deliberate, never quite leaving. Was it just exhaustion making me hallucinate, or had something followed me home that night? Let me know in the comments. What would you have done?